Hi everyone, my name's Cece. Welcome to my channel where I talk about books and stuff. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of February. Now, I read 8 books total. 3 of them were audiobooks, and then the rest were physical books. So let's get into it. The first book that I have to talk about is Final Girls by Riley Sager. So this is following a woman named Quinn who 10 years prior experienced a horrible thing. Some man came up to this cabin that her and her friends were staying at, and everybody died except for her. From then, she was labeled a final girl along with 2 other women who went through something similar but completely unrelated to what our main character Quinn went through. But they are all labeled final girls, which is a term that is used a lot within like the slasher movie genre, as in the person who usually makes it out alive at the end of the slasher movie, and it's usually a girl. So final girls. This is the first like mystery murder thriller that I have ever experienced, and I had no expectations going into it. All that I knew was that Riley Sager was a popular thriller author. I actually didn't know. I think that this is his first book, or like his first thriller, I think. And I didn't know that going into it. Now, I listened to the audiobook, so I think that helped with my enjoyment of it, because I read some other reviews and people said that it was a little slow in the beginning, and I would agree that the pacing was a little bit off. However, because I listened to the audiobook, it didn't really affect my experience because I had it sped up. Initially, when I finished reading this book, I gave it 3 stars. But you know, I've had some time to like think about it, and it's a 2-star for me because there were just some things that I really did not like. Okay, I found it entertaining enough for it being the first thriller that I'd ever experienced, but there were so many times throughout listening to it that I was just like, what the heck is going on? And then even in the end, I was like, what? Here are just a few things that I didn't like. The main character, Quinn, surrounded herself with awful people before this traumatic thing happened and after. Her boyfriend was not supportive at all. He kept telling her that she was fine and that she'd moved past everything that happened to her, when obviously she hadn't. Her mom got her addicted to Xanax, which is like, what? Her best friend in college was not nice, not a good friend, pressuring her to lose her virginity, which is like, friends don't do that to you. Like, friends don't do that to you. That was just really weird to me, and it's kind of like, it just made me question, it's like, has this author ever even talked to like 19-year-old girls? Like, what? I don't know. And there was an aspect of the ending that was used twice, and I felt that it was extremely unnecessary. It added nothing. It gave nothing for the story at all. And I just don't really know why the author put it in twice. Yeah, the ending was not predictable, but mostly because there wasn't really any foreshadowing for it. The whole time, the author's trying to make you believe that it's going to end a certain way, but I felt that that kind of took away from the character. Like, it just didn't really make sense with who this character, like, it just didn't make sense. I might do like a full-on review discussion about this book because there's just a lot to talk about. There was a lot that I just disliked. I'm sorry if you really like this book. I'm not trying to like hate on it or anything, but I personally did not like it. It was fun in the moment and hecka crazy. Like, I was like, what the heck is going on. So it was like fun to listen to while I was at work, but it did not really make sense to me. So 2 stars. The next book that I read is Punching the Air by Zoboi and Yusef Salaam. This is following a young boy who is wrongfully convicted of a crime and he ends up actually going to prison. This is written in verse, so super quick read. And if you didn't know, Yusef Salaam is a part of the Exonerated 5, and he was wrongfully convicted of a crime and went to prison when he was a teenager. So I'm sure that a lot of the stuff in this book hits close to home for him and probably stems from his own experiences. So that is mainly the reason why I wanted to read this book. I knew that it would be heavy and maybe a little bit hard to read, but I really wanted to support Yusef Salaam and his success, and I just think it's great that he is out here writing books, and it was beautifully written. It was really amazing, and I would highly recommend to any and everyone. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Super quick because it's written in verse. I read it in like 2 hours and it was just 5 out of 5. I gave it 5 stars. Now, the next book, I also listened to the audiobook, and it is The Black Kids by Christina Hammonds Reed. Yes, Christina Hammonds Reed. This is following a young girl named Ashley, and it takes place in the 1990s, and she comes from a wealthy neighborhood. She goes to school with predominantly white students, and her whole life she's just felt like she's just a regular kid. But then the Rodney King riots happen in Los Angeles, and she feels like she becomes one of the black kids. I did enjoy this book. I gave it 4 stars. It was a really nice young adult coming of age story. It was interesting. The writing was good. I thought that, you know, again, another important narrative to read, especially if you don't read diversely. I feel like this is a good introduction to maybe reading things that are a little bit outside your comfort zone, if that makes sense. However, I didn't really like the main character, but I do think that that was intentional. There were things that she did that were not okay, and she reflected on that and why she did what she did, why she said the things she said, and she apologized for them. So I really did like that. However, there were other little things in the way that she described people that I felt was very shallow, but I also think that that was intentional. And a big part of the book was the relationship between her and her sister and how they differ, and her sister is very involved in activism, and Ashley doesn't really understand why. She doesn't really understand why her sister wants to be involved in stuff like that, why her sister would want to move out of their neighborhood into the neighborhood that her parents, you know, tried to make sure that they did not experience. So I feel like that whole conversation was really interesting, and she had a really good family unit. So I really liked that aspect of it. And overall, 4 out of 5 stars. This next book that I listened to, also, right, audiobook, because I listened to it, is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. I have a hard name to pronounce, so I get the frustrations, but I'm trying. This book is following 2 sisters in Nigeria, and it opens up with one sister helping the other hide a dead body. And so it's really short. I listened to the audiobook in 2 hours, mostly because I wanted to start and finish an audiobook at work. So I listened to it really fast. And at this point, a lot of the details have left my mind, but the story is basically just about these 2 sisters, and the older one is dealing with the younger one, like killing these men. She just keeps killing these men that she goes on dates with, and the older sister is like this is becoming a pattern. She says that it's in self-defense, but I don't really believe her. So it's about that. Overall, I gave this 3 stars. It was quick, it was fun, it was definitely interesting to read. It was solid. However, I don't think that this is a story that's going to stick with me for a really long time. And again, I haven't read that many murder mystery thrillers, so I don't really know if like this is a genre for me. I do want to read more in the future, but seeing as I gave the first 2 that I listened to 2 and 3 stars, I just don't really know if like it's for me. I do enjoy them in the moment, but afterwards they're just not like my main genre. So who knows? I don't know if a murder mystery thriller would ever like be like my favorite, but that's right, I haven't experienced that many. Okay, moving on. The next book that I read is Days of Blood and Starlight by Lani Taylor, and I also read Dreams of Gods and Monsters, which is the 3rd book, so I will talk about them both at the same time. This is a young adult fantasy series following a girl named Karu who lives in Prague, and she has been raised by these beings called chimera, which are hybrid beings, you know, like part human, part animal, not always part human, like mixtures of different animals. And she knows that her family is different. She knows that nobody else, she's never met anybody else who is like her family. She's never met any other chimera. She doesn't really know much about her past. All she knows is that the people that she lives with are not her biological parents. Pretty much it. The first book very much centered around a romance in the time of a very intense war. So that is basically right the premise for the first book. I don't want to give spoilers for the 2nd and 3rd book. I gave Days of Blood and Starlight 5 stars. I thought it was a great sequel, and it really seemed like things were moving along like really well for the 3rd book. I thought it was great setup. It was just interesting, you know, our 2 main characters are kind of pulled apart, and like, you know, which is like to be expected in a sequel, and the main character goes through some really dope development, and there's a lot that's happening. Susanna, our main character's best friend, I thought their relationship was just really cute throughout the whole series. I am gonna say content warning for Days of Blood and Starlight for attempted sexual assault. It definitely threw me off guard, and it's pretty graphic. So just be warned before you go into it if you are thinking about reading this series. Dreams of Gods and Monsters. I gave this 4 stars, maybe 3.5. I did really like this. Again, throughout the entire series, the writing is phenomenal, and I do really love the characters, like I do, but there was not a lot of action towards the end. It felt a little anticlimactic, and I've never read a series finale by Lani Taylor, so I didn't really know what to expect. At this point, I do know that her stories are more focused on the writing and on the characters and less plot and action, which is fine. However, I thought there was going to be like this big epic fight, and like it was there, it happened, we just didn't get to see it, and some things kind of wrapped up a little bit conveniently for me. And then there were also things that were introduced in this last book, which is kind of like, I don't know, if you're gonna don't introduce something in the last book. That was just kind of how I felt about that, because I was just kind of confused, and I was like, where's this going? Like, this is the last book, like how are, and it just felt like world building was still happening, which, you know, again, for a last book, it just kind of threw me off. And I feel like there could have been one more book, which is my opinion for a lot of finales to series. There could have been one more book, you know, especially when it's a series that I really, really liked. So a little bit disappointing, but overall a really solid series that I would recommend if you like young adult fantasy. And also, look at this cover. It's gorgeous. The next book that I read is We Are Not Free by Traci Chee. This is a young adult novel following 14 different Japanese American teenagers at the time of World War II and their experiences with incarceration camps. I gave this 5 stars. I thought it was phenomenal. I thought the writing was incredible, and a lot of the stuff that you read about in this book is based on the author's family history. I just felt like it was extremely powerful and also extremely heartbreaking. Again, super important story that needs to be told and shared with everyone, because I don't know about any of you guys, but I never learned about these incarceration camps in school at all, which is just so horrible. It's something that impacted so many citizens and just like, right, people in general, that it's just so horrible. Tactics that the government used to divide these people and make them go against each other, when it's like the real enemy right now is the government, because they're the ones who are doing this to you. Like, you shouldn't get mad at each other, you should be mad at them. I think the author did a really good job of making you care for each character and what they're going through. Also, she did a good job of like transitioning from one character to the next. You only get 1 chapter with each character, but like you definitely feel for them in that 1 chapter. I did have a little bit of a hard time keeping up with all the names just because there are so many characters and like who belongs to which family. That was a little hard for me to keep up with, but not even like by the end it was like, yeah, no, I know who these people are. 5 out of 5 stars. Would highly recommend to everyone. I think everyone should read this book. The last book that I read in February is Aurora Rising by Amie, Kaufman, and Kristoff. This is following a ragtag group of kids who have just graduated from this space academy, and it is also following a girl named Aurora who was found floating in space, and she was cryogenically frozen. I think that's how you say it. This is one of the only sci-fi books that I've read. Aurora has been floating in space in a cryosleep for the last 200 years, and she sneaks on to this ragtag group's little spaceship. They're just dropping off supplies to this group of people. That's all that they're doing. But then the space government is going after Aurora, and they are kind of killing everybody who knows anything about her. So the story takes off from there. I gave this 4 stars. You know, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun, very lighthearted. I think the authors definitely had something in mind for what they wanted this book to be, and I think they accomplished it. I was looking at Goodreads, and Kristoff posted a little like review synopsis kind of situation for this book, and he said that it was The Breakfast Club meets Guardians of the Galaxy. And yeah, that's pretty much what it is. You know, none of the characters take themselves too seriously. They're all really sarcastic. Everybody's talking about how hot everybody else is, which threw me off in the beginning, but then I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go with it. I'm just not gonna care, and I'm just gonna go with it. There were a few things, you know, like the romances. Is there a lot of chemistry? I don't really know. I mean, not really. I felt like it just kind of happened, you know, and it was just like there, and it's like, okay, we haven't really had much time with each other, but you guys are like trying to date. Okay, yeah, sure. I'm not reading too much into it. I'm just kind of enjoying the ride. And so in that aspect, I thought it was really fun. And also plot wise, I thought it was really interesting, seeing as I haven't really read very many sci-fi books. I thought this was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to read the second book for sure. So yeah, 4 stars. Those were all the books that I read in February. Let me know if you've read any of these, what you read in February. Let's talk in the comments. Like, subscribe, all of that, and I will see you in another video. Bye bye.